So here's a game plan. I went ahead and grinded coffee at 11 setting, which is the coarsest on my EK43 grinder. And then I also did a 8. So we're gonna see how those work out, correlate and everything. We're just gonna go for multiple pours and everything. But for now, let's go ahead and make some coffee. Still acidic, but very subtle, pleasant, doesn't linger. It's a little bit of chocolatey notes on it. I wouldn't say that it's under extracted, but it's still lacking that pizzazz, and that could just be the coffee. It's pleasant coffee. It's not bad. Is it something that I will gravitate to? Probably no, not really. This is a pour over, which I do most of the time. I think it's slightly better than it was before. I do taste that it seems like it's better extracted. We'll see those numbers soon. It's nice, simple coffee. It's kind of like a one notey type of thing. It's 2 notes actually. It has that pleasant acidity on it. Has a little bit of grapefruit taste on it, but then it dies. I can see why they say it's a crowd pleaser because it's approachable for multiple people. It won't be as offensive. And also the application. Probably the pour over is probably not the best application, you know. But this coffee, today's the 2nd, about 3 weeks, which is where it needs to be, you know. So let's go ahead and taste the other one. Somebody squeezed a grapefruit and orange together, and it's more like concentrated in your mouth. Then it dies down. A good way for it to be not as lingering. Kind of tastes like a candy orange type of taste. Then it dies. I like this version a lot better. It's more pleasant, pleasing on the palate. Yeah, it's nicer. It's richer. It's not full body, but it's a lot more heavier on the mouth and the palate compared to the 11 ratio, the setting. Yeah, it seems a lot better. I like this one a lot more. I know you've seen this before, I've heard about this. I use this all the time. I think I talked about it from time to time. In the podcast, I talk about it. But this is a TDS meter. I got this a long time ago, about 12 years ago. Probably one of the best things I've ever gotten, but also one of those things to where it's kind of crippling because you tend to trust it more. And then you start to let your palate be run by this thingy. So I use it all the time, and it kind of just gives me an understanding of what the coffee is actually doing, what the extractions are really coming through, and seeing what we're working with. It is extremely important that we do work with extraction because extraction is flavor, whichever way you may be on the scale of it. And a lot of times when people say about like, you know, I like it as coarse as possible, this is what I taste, blah, 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 blah. That's fine, but is it really tasty? Or are you really extracting it the way that you think that you should? Things like that. We're not going to try. We're going to actually get a reading of what this is. And then once we do that, I think we'll be in a better light of understanding this coffee even more. We're going to taste the coffee with Karen and then let her know the findings of what we found out and seeing if she can help us coax us a little bit more, or we may be where we need to be for this coffee. Probably the best that it's going to get, which is not a bad thing. It lets us know that coffee is coffee. It tastes the way it tastes, especially after it's roasted. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. What's up?
Cool. Let me first start off here. This is do you know your name that I gave you?
Yes, you're calling me Karen. What's on your mind?
Okay, great, Karen. It's been over a week since we've talked, and when we talked about dialing in the coffee. So I went ahead and took your suggestions. And are you familiar with the EK43 grinder?
Yes, I'm familiar with the EK43 grinder. It's a commercial grinder known for its consistency and ability to produce very precise grind sizes. How did it go with dialing in the coffee using the suggestions we talked about?
It went really well. What I end up doing, I did about 5 or 6 pulses on the regular Hario V60 filters. And what I was going for or aiming for was a 20.64 extraction. So I did two different scenarios. I did one at an 11 setting, which is the coarsest on the EK43. And I went ahead and picked 8 on the same grinder, 20 grams of coffee to 300 grams of actual water. So that's a 1:15 ratio at 200 degrees Fahrenheit.
It sounds like you really dialed in the details. How did the coffee turn out with those adjustments, particularly with the different grind setting? Did one brew stand out in terms of flavor or the vibrancy you were aiming for?
Yes, it was the 8 setting, so it was a little bit finer compared to the 11 setting, but a lot less coarser compared to the other setting that I did initially. So that really surprised me, and I think the 200 degrees Fahrenheit and also the multiple pulses really did help bring out the extraction in that coffee.
That's fantastic to hear. It's great that the finer grind and multiple pulses made such a positive difference. It sounds like you really nailed the combination to bring out those vibrant, juicy flavors. Do you feel like this is a method you'll stick with for this particular coffee, or are there other tweaks you're thinking of trying?
I think it works well with this particular coffee. It may work for other coffees too. And it surprised me how well even the 11 rating for the light roast still worked really well. The issues that I did have of it, that the flavors weren't as vibrant and juicy compared to what the 8 setting was.
It's interesting that the 11 setting still worked well, but didn't quite reach the same level of vibrancy as the 8. That's a valuable insight because it suggests that while a coarser grind can still produce a good cup, going a bit finer really helps unlock those brighter, more pronounced flavors in this coffee. It sounds like you found a solid approach that could be a good starting point for dialing in other light roasts as well. Are there any other coffees you're thinking of trying this method on, or any other experiments you have in mind?
I think this is it so far, but I think it's one of those things to where I will take this in consideration moving forward, because I always thought that when you are dealing with a lighter roast coffee, you want to start going as fine as possible. But like I said earlier, it's interesting that I was able to extract the coffee in a way to where it still produced a decent type of coffee and extracted the coffee enough to where you can really taste the difference between the 11 setting versus the 8 setting on the lighter roast.
That's a great takeaway. It's fascinating how the grind size can make such a significant difference, even within a relatively narrow range. Your experience reinforces that while there are general guidelines for brewing light roasts, it's really about experimenting with different settings to find what works best for each specific coffee. It sounds like you've gained some valuable insights that will definitely help you with future brews. If you ever feel like experimenting with another coffee or technique, I'm here to help you think it through. Keep up the great work and enjoy your next cup.
Sounds great. I do have a question for you though. Do you think, just for shits and giggles, sorry to curse, to just play around with probably espresso with this coffee? Because like I said, the 8 setting really did work well. The taste also didn't linger. It was juicy in the beginning, unlike the 11 where the grapefruity taste kind of lingered a little bit compared to the orangey candy tasting of the 8 setting on the grinder.
No worries about the language. It could definitely be interesting to experiment with espresso using this coffee, especially given the differences you've already noticed between the 8 and 11 settings on the EK43. Espresso tends to concentrate flavors and can highlight different aspects of the coffee's profile. So you might find that the juicy notes or lingering flavors come through differently when pulled as a shot. If you go for it, I'd suggest starting with a slightly finer grind than what you used for your pour over and playing around with your shot time and yield to see what brings out the best in the coffee. Given your experience with the 8 setting for pour over, you might want to start around that fineness and adjust from there. It could be a fun experiment to see how those citrusy and candy-like notes translate into espresso. Would you give it a try?
I will definitely give it a try next time. Thank you. All right.
You're welcome. I'm excited to hear how it turns out. Enjoy the experiment and feel free to reach out whenever you want to chat about your results. Happy brewing.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Talk to you later.
So that really worked out really well. So we are going to try this coffee as an espresso. We'll probably give it another week to try this experiment and everything. And that's the thing about this coffee. I don't think it's designed or curated or crafted for espresso. I really don't. I think it's for a pour over type of situation to where you can enjoy it amongst friends. It doesn't say anything about try it as espresso too, but we're gonna try it as espresso. I'm wondering to see if those bright notes are gonna be too intense. That's the thing that I'm kind of frightened about, actually. Not frightened, I mean, it's coffee, right? But we'll see. We're gonna play around with it. We're gonna have fun with it, because really right now, 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks, this is perfect, ideal for espresso. I don't think there's a need to go any further with pour over. I am enjoying this coffee a lot more. Is it my cup of tea or cup of coffee? Not necessarily, but I do like the way that I was able to push my my boundaries and everything as I do these type of things. And we'll go from there, okay? Till next time, talk to you later. Bye.